Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tried Stone Ministries Present Truth podcast. This is our second edition, and welcome you. I thank you for joining us this second time around, where we're going to continue to expand on what is going on in this world through the biblical lens and through the spirit of prophecy. Again, if you're not familiar with the writings of Ellen G. White, we call those typically as Adventists the spirit of prophecy. And so we're going to be relying on those and the Bible as well to flesh out what is happening in our world today. And so, again, thank you for joining us. And let's go ahead and dive right in and get started here. As I shrink myself down, we get a chance to look at the screen a little bit better. Of course, this is our disclaimer for the slideshow presentation that we're going to be showing today. Today's message is entitled 10 Kings and One Mind. We're told that in the Bible that there are going to be 10 kings that give their power over to a beast for 1 hour, and they all have the same mind. So we're going to be really diving into what this looks like, and what does that mean that they have one mind? What are they thinking of? What are they planning? And who are these 10 kings? So let's dive a little bit deeper. Right now we're dealing with situations in this world where a world order is dying and another one is being set up in its place. And so we have various things that are happening around the world, different types of unrest and uncertainty, social issues. And so we're going to look today at how those social issues and these things that are going around the world are helping to actually tear down the old world order in favor of a new world order. I have here, it says, illegal immigration leading to an emboldened authoritarian approach for apprehension. Skyrocketing inflation rates said to be on rapid decline are leaving people in starvation and poverty. The social unrest, mass casualty events, protests, riots, and perpetual division. The urban decay now spreading out to the suburbs and rural communities. Our God-given rights manipulated and distorted by a monolithic power structure few would scarcely believe could exist. And why? Well, the mark of the beast will soon be urged upon all living on earth. The economic control structure is being erected in plain view. A new form of theocracy is making its way in darkness, in legislative halls, from pulpits, in the media, and through social engineering. Humanity is being led to accept a new religious order. They call it Christianity, but this does not bear the character of Christ. By perplexity and anxiety over the events taking place around us, the power structure is weakening the faith of the populace in government along with laws in general. Seeing the decay of the American empire through fraud and disloyalty to the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, we see a total wiping away of the values that made this country the greatest nation on earth. And of course, we're being told that it's being done this way to make it great again, but you're actually destroying the fabric, the little bit that we had left of the Constitution. So why is this happening? And where is this unsustainable paradigm going? Well, let's look at it through a biblical lens here. We see these feet here of iron and clay, a representation from the dream that Daniel had in Daniel chapter 2. And of course, we see the rest of the structure on the right-hand side being destroyed by a rock. And so a stone not carved by human hands coming from the sky, destroying the statue. So we need to understand what is actually happening here. And if you notice the allegory that God is using here, the parable that he's using here of a structure that has bare feet touching the earth, and it has 10 toes. And of course, we're talking about 10 kings. And where are these toes located? Well, if we look at the statue, we see the head of gold, the arms of silver. We see the chest of brass and thighs of brass. And then we also see the legs, 2 legs made of iron. And so what's actually happening here is we're seeing through the various metals, the various eras of what we might consider world orders. So we see the dominance of Babylon is the head of gold, and then the Medo-Persian Empire that took over from Babylon is the silver. The brass is the Greek Empire, and of course it was divided. And then from the Greek Empire you have Rome. And of course, the Roman Empire actually absorbed and adopted a lot of the principles of Greece into their philosophy. But you get to these feet, and now it's the iron and clay. So there's these two distinct groups that just do not coalesce. They don't actually work together. They're actually in strife with one another. So it makes this statue somewhat brittle. But nonetheless, the statue is complete at the feet with 10 toes. And those 10 toes are at the very final end of time. And so we're going to see how that there's been a couple representations of this in throughout history. But of course, what we're dealing with today is, of course, in our time, and how these 10 toes apply to the situation and the world climate that we're living in right now. So we read in Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 to 44, it says, "And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes," and of course there's 10 of those, "part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, and there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken." So again, this is dealing with the era right at the close of time. You have these two groups. And so this statue is of course based on the feet. That is the foundation. But the foundation is, of course, how do we see here? It is weak. So let's continue reading. It says here, in verse 43, "And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." So if we look at this statue, what we're seeing is a representation of various forms of a new world order at their various times in history. And so what we're dealing with the feet and the toes is the last new world order. It is going to be a very intense time for God's people. And of course, the iron and the clay do not mix. So we're going to see a separating out of people, godly people who are represented by the clay, that are resisting the iron. And the iron is we're going to reveal that here in just a second. But we really want to talk about these 10 toes. It says here, in Revelation, it makes a reference to 10 horns. And of course, Daniel and Revelation are books that go hand in hand. So this gives a little bit more detail as to those 10 toes in the form of 10 horns. So this is Revelation 17, verses 12 and 13. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet." Okay? "But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." So this massive control system, these kings are going to be a part of. They're going to give their allegiance over to this beast for a short time, 1 hour, it says here. And it says that these 10 kings have not received a kingdom as yet. And so that's important to understand, because there is a historic reference to the destruction or the falling apart of the Roman Empire, which led to the formation of the 10 kingdoms of what we call Western Europe. And so those 10 kingdoms are a early historical fulfillment of this prophecy, but the statue that we see is actually standing on the entire earth and is dealing with the last remnant of time on earth. So those 10 kings that are in Europe don't have necessarily worldwide power. There's other nations involved with this statue. So how exactly then would you control the entire world with just those 10 kingdoms in Europe? Well, we're going to discover how they're going to do that. So just like Europe was divided into 10 regions, we're going to see if the world itself isn't going to be divided into 10 regions. Let's continue on here. So this is, according to the Club of Rome, the 10 economic unions. Okay, we see that over here on the right-hand side. Isn't it interesting how when Trump was first coming into office, he was talking about how Greenland needed to be annexed and Canada needed to become the 51st state? Why would he say something like that? Well, if you look over at this map here, we see that there is a North American Union, according to the Club of Rome, that encompasses Greenland, Canada, of course, of Alaska, and the United States into one economic union. Maybe maybe we can look at this to see if there's if we're being given a glimpse as to what they are planning to do with the world. And of course, there's all the instability that's going on in Europe right now, and of course in Ukraine. We see Economic Union number 5, which is the Asian Cooperation and Dialogue. Are we seeing a grouping together of economic unions, maybe called BRICS, where we see trade and resource-based economies that are, of course, traded in money, but is the money more of just a tool to be able to exchange resources? We're talking about major pipelines that are being built from one end of Russia to the other to provide oil to China, which is, of course, Economic Union number 10. Economic Union number 3 is Japan. We see Economic Union number 4 is the Pacific Union, which encompasses New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. Of course, we also have the African Union, which is the central states or the central nations of Africa, and then we see number 7, which is the Arab Customs Union, and that goes all the way from from one end of North Africa all the way into the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia. So is that why that we're seeing all this destabilization going on in the Middle East? Are they getting ready to introduce a new economic union? We see all these things happening in South America as well, which is Economic Union number 6. Are they trying to destabilize nations that might oppose being part of an economic union in South America? Maybe that's exactly what they are trying to do, is make it that there is no opposition. And of course, we also have India, and those nations down here are also involved in the Southeast Asian nations, which is another economic union. So we're seeing this world is being divided into 10 regions. Well, how are you going to control those 10 regions? Well, you need people in charge, right? And if we're no longer using a representative government, if we're no longer functioning in a world that's in need of representation through parliaments and governmental systems, what if this is actually what they're trying to do, is to bring this about and have people destroy their own governmental systems and laws with their own hands? Not without cause, right? Because people are really upset about what's happening in their countries and how their leadership is taking advantage of them and the huge disparity between rich and poor. Could this be introduced as a solution to all those problems? Could this be introduced as a way to end the corruption of the various governments and to bring about a new resource-based economy instead of a debt-based global system? Well, we'll have to examine that a little bit further here. So what is the Club of Rome, and why do they get to decide what's happening in the world? Well, let's see here. In 1968, Accademia delle Scienze in Rome, Italy, the Club of Rome consists of 100 full members selected from current and former heads of state and government, UN administrators, high-level politicians, government officials, diplomats, scientists, economists, and business leaders from around the globe. So this is not just simply a regional body of government. These people are handpicked. These were the highest of the high. This is the creme de la creme that is part of this Club of Rome. So this is no small thing. It says here it stimulated considerable attention in 1972 with the first report from the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth. Since the 1st of July 2008, the organization has been based in Switzerland. So it's very interesting. We're not going to read all of this here. If you want to, you can stop and read a little bit more of this, or you can go down here to their website. This is the Wikipedia, or you can actually go to the Club of Rome website. That's where I got these from, and you can read these. But it says here, this is where I wanted to focus. It says here, decades of exponential consumption and population growth have come to imperil the Earth's climate and life-supporting systems, while reinforcing social and economic inequalities and impoverishing billions globally. So we are the problem to ourselves, is what this is saying. Consumption and overpopulation, that's what they're saying. We need to really bring this down to be more manageable. We can't just have people doing what they want to do, because we're going to end up destroying the planet. It says here in this other arrow, it says it also publishes a limited number of peer-reviewed reports to the Club of Rome. Its seminal best-selling 1972 report, The Limits to Growth, alerted the world to the consequences of the interactions between human systems and the health of our planet. Since then, more than 45 reports have reinforced and expanded this intellectual foundation. So again, this is peer-reviewed. It looks like it's great stuff because we can all agree on it. It's scientific. And so therefore, it must be right. We have too many people. We need to deal with it, because otherwise we're going to have dire consequences. And they've been putting out numerous reports since then to make sure that the governments and the people in charge understand that this issue is a genuine and real issue. The real question is it? As we continue reading here, again, the underlined portion is where I'm going to be focusing here. It says, an international team of researchers from MIT began a study of the implications of unbridled exponential growth. This is talking about population growth. So their key focus is on population. Okay? Population and the fact that we produce too much, therefore we consume too much, and we're consuming resources that are not renewable, and so therefore we're destroying the planet, right? It says here in 1972, the club's first major report, The Limits to Growth, was published. It sold millions of copies worldwide, creating media controversy and also impetus for the global sustainability movement, right? So this is where we get our sustainability goals, right? This is where the UN is getting these things from. So this Club of Rome has had a tremendous impact in terms of its influence on numerous bodies throughout the world, including governments and the United Nations. It says, this call for objective scientific assessment of the impact of humanity's behavior and the use of resources still defines the Club of Rome today. So this is still going on. This is not a sleeping thing anymore. This is quite a bit awake and is affecting our daily lives in terms of how people are forming policy that we may not even be aware of. It says here, the concerns of the Club of Rome have not lost their relevance. Again, they are making sure that they are being heard. It says, propelled by a new mission and organizational structure, which today includes 35 national associations. So that's a great deal of influence right there. The Club of Rome has now published over 45 reports, and they're dispersing these to these 35 national associations. So it's almost like an echo chamber, right? So you have 45 reports coming from this Club of Rome that is going to 35 national associations. So if they repeat each other, if they even, and to people who may not realize that they are interwoven, it may sound as though independent groups are all echoing the same thing, when actually what's happening is they're just parroting the same talking points. Could that be possible? Maybe so. It says here, the club remains true to its historical intent. While it attempts to lay the foundations for long-term systemic shifts in global social, environmental, and economic systems, in short, it is an established, respected international think tank positioned to face the core challenges of the 21st century. So, when you talk about various words and semantics, think tank could also maybe be kind of like a secret society in a way, because maybe not all of us are involved in making the decisions that these individuals are making and have the mindset of these particular individuals, and also the interpretation of the paradigm that we're living in. That might not be represented by the average person in this group. So maybe this think tank is somewhat exclusive. It says here, our members are notable scientists, economists, businessmen, businesswomen, high-level civil servants, and former heads of state. So, again, is it possible that these people could be working on an agenda? Many of these people, like economists, businessmen, businesswomen, high-level civil servants, and former heads of state, are also members of secret societies. So, including Masons, Eastern Star, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group. So a lot of these people also have overlapping associations, which may be impacting what they're doing here at the Club of Rome. And of course, that's just my opinion. If we look here at the Club of Rome website, we see that they have 5 impact hubs. And then we kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but these are their focuses, right? This is what their attention is focused on where we need to begin to change so that we can bring about a new sustainable development goals and a new way of organizing the planet. So we see here we have climate planetary emergency. So this is, of course, saying this is that the glaciers were melting and we were going to be swimming down Manhattan in 2012 and that type of thing, which of course didn't happen. We also have an emerging new civilization. If you notice that there's only just a couple people and the animals are all out. So does this mean we need to thin down the population? How about this here? Rethinking finance. Should we re-engineer how our economies are based so that we're not destroying the planet, we're actually helping the planet? That would be kind of the framing of what they're saying here. How about reframing economics in general? Maybe we need a different kind of economic system and accounting. So that would be over in this section here. And how about developing the youth and youth leadership to take this message to the world, right? So we need change warriors, right? Just if you look at these individual 5 little pictures, is there one little item that is consistent in each and every one of these pictures? This is just a side note here. Like, how about, is it these windmills? Well, they're almost in every picture, but they're not in this one. What item is in every single one of these pictures? How about the sun? You have the sun here. How about you have the sun here? You have the sun here. You have the sun here. You have the sun here. Could that be an homage to something that is also consistent with the teachings of Rome? And we talked about that statue. That statue had iron legs, right? And it had 2 legs. And it represents pagan Rome, which conquered after Greece. And now you have papal Rome, which is the variation of the Roman Empire that we live with in our world today. And what is one of their biggest features? Well, their claim to ecclesiastical power on earth is the ability to change the day of worship from the 7th day of the week to the 1st day of the week, which is the Sunday. Sunday. The venerable day of the sun. And of course, when they mean that, they're talking about the lux, the light, Lucifer, the light bearer, who gave enlightenment to man when he gave us that fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is what they believe. This is what the mystery schools believe. So is that why this representation is consistent in all these pictures? It could be. I don't know. Maybe it is. So, Limits to Growth. That was the first book that came out that was the one that caused all the uproar. Hey, there's too many people on this planet. We got to do something about this. And then there's this other book, Mankind at the Turning Point. This is the second report to the Club of Rome. And pay attention to these names. I can't pronounce them, so I'm not going to try, but just pay attention to these names because it's going to come up here in a second. In the New York Times, there was an article regarding the changes that the Club of Rome had introduced. And so there's an article that was written. You can see that article here. It's by Anne Crittenden. It was written in April 15, 1976. And here's a little bit larger picture of where that article was found. But what does it actually say? So let's read it. because this is going to be really important as we continue on. It says international institutions must be adjusted or created to manage such common problems as the use of the oceans and of space and the development of new energy sources. So international institutions must be adjusted or created. So that means it might not exist right now. It might not exist to be able to manage these common problems as to the use of the oceans, of space, and of new energy sources. You would almost have to have control over the entire planet to be able to dictate who uses what and who has access to what. So is this what they mean by adjusted or created international institutions? Well, let's just continue to read on. Summarizing the conference's conclusion, Professor Hell, I can't pronounce it, a Brazilian politician scientist, said the danger to civilization if corrective measures were not taken was not that man would perish from a lack of food or raw materials, but that long before that happened, democratic and humanistic institutions would be destroyed. Let me ask you a question. Are we seeing democratic and humanistic institutions being destroyed? Let's continue on. In the conditions of the coming times, the necessity of reestablishing a viable balance between population and resources, if the present generation is not able to timely adopt the necessary corrective measures, will inevitably tend to bring about a technocratic version of Oriental despotism, of which Stalinism and Nazism have already given us an anticipated view. Are we seeing the rise of a technocratic version of control? We talked about this in our first installment of the Present Truth podcast, didn't we? We talked about oligarchical, technocratic, fascist control over the planet. Well, here they're talking about going all the way to a form of Oriental despotism. This is talking about the horrible living conditions in China and, of course, North Korea. Are we starting to see a rebirth of this type of policy worldwide? Is this perhaps the way we're going? Are they using this as a way to threaten the people and say, if we don't change, this is the direction we're going to go? Is that why we're seeing so much unrest? Don't know. It says here, thus, in its most recent analysis, the Club of Rome continues to hold forth the possibility of disaster if today's patterns of growth and development are not modified. We have too many people, too much production. What are we going to do about it? Maybe we need carbon credits and carbon footprint monitoring and social credit scores. I don't know. It says here, but the thrust of these warnings has shifted since the organization's first study, published in 1972, emphasized the physical limits to growth determined by the finitude of the Earth's resources. That hypothesis has now been substantially modified by subsequent studies, some of which demonstrate that it is technically possible to produce enough food and energy to sustain large world populations in affluence without undue pollution. We just need a completely redo how we live life on Earth, and everything needs to be under a more controlled way of doing things. It says here, but the latest studies indicate that such solutions will probably not be found under existing socio-political conditions and constraints. So what do they have to do? So this is talking about the old world order. We can't do it with this old world order. We need a new world order. So it says here, unless these systems are modified, some studies conclude catastrophic outcomes will result in the not too distant future. Oh, we're all going to die, right? So we better do something about this. So what's the solution? This is the scenario foreseen in a sophisticated mathematical model, dividing the world into 10 regions and developed by those two individuals that I cannot pronounce, their names that we talked about in the second report to the United Nations, Mankind at the Turning Point. It says here, West Germany, and of a model developed under the direction of Amilcar Herrera and of the Bariloche Foundation in Argentina. So this has actually been in the works since the 70s. Since the 70s. We're at 2025. And we are seeing a rapid increase in uprisings, riots. We're seeing a huge disparity between the rich and the poor in this country. And in countries around the world, we're seeing people who are so frustrated because their daily life is so hard, and they see people in power just skating through this world without any issues. And so there's this huge disparity now between the rich and the poor. The middle class is being vaporized. And is that being done in such a way so that they can bring about these 10 economic regions that they're talking about here? Is this all part of the plan? Let's take a look. So, the first global revolution. This is another book that was written to another report that was written to the Club of Rome. It says here, the first global revolution is a book written by Alexander King and Bertrand Schneider and published by Pantheon Books in 1991. The book follows up the earlier 1972 work product from the Club of Rome titled The Limits to Growth. So these are all directly connected. The book's subtitle is a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. The book was intended as a blueprint for the 21st century, putting forward a strategy for world survival at the onset of what they called the world's first global revolution. We're going to be talking about this global revolution here in just a moment. This is a quote from this book, The First Global Revolution. Okay, this is from the chapter called The Vacuum, page 75. The common enemy of humanity is man. Listen to what they say. We're going to take this apart. It says, in searching for a common enemy. They're doing what? So they're intentionally looking for a common enemy against whom we can all unite. We came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. So who has determined that these are the enemies? That these are the things that we need to be looking out for? The Club of Rome did. The Club of Rome did. So did they say that they based this all on science originally? No. This is that they were looking for a common enemy, and that they say we came up with the idea of pollution, global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat, which must be confronted by everyone together. We have to unite, maybe like we're building the Tower of Babel. But in designating these dangers as the enemy, we fall into the trap, which we have already warned readers about, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. See, when I was a kid, we didn't have global warming, we just had weather. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So how are they able to determine that humanity is the enemy of itself? Because they came up with the idea. That's what they just said. This is quite revealing, and this is why this is so important to understand. When you understand the social engineering that's going on in this planet with sustainable development goals and all these other things that are coming out of the United Nations and the Club of Rome, these things are all designed to pit humanity against itself so that we tear down the old world order in favor of a new world order. And who's going to benefit? Could it be that think tank? Are they going to be the ones that benefit? Are we going to be the ones that benefit? We'll have to take a look and see. So we talk about this large revolution that they're seeing that could possibly happen globally, right? Well, I want to read this quote to you. This is from chapter 25, Education and Character, from the book Education. This is from page 228, paragraph 2. It says, at the same time, anarchy is seeking to sweep away all law, not only divine, but human. The centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims, the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution are all tending to involve the whole world in a similar struggle to that which convulsed France. Are we seeing this fulfillment today? Is that because, according to the Club of Rome, you almost have to have this revolution in order to tear down the old world structure to bring in the new? And who better to tear down the old world order than the people themselves? So instead of having the big bad guy come and knock down your sandcastle, why not have you tear down your own sandcastle? Instead of going back and demanding from your government that they have a representative government, whether it be a parliamentary system or a constitutional republic, instead of demanding that they go back to those processes and fix what's wrong, why not just tear the whole thing down, have no faith in any government whatsoever, and then introduce a global system of control? And offer it as a carrot on a stick for people who are tired of living in these types of conditions that people are facing across the whole world. Is it possible that that's what we're seeing today? In Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, it says, "And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child." Is it possible that just as it was when Christ first came, there was massive movements of people from one place to another for this taxation? Is it possible that this is going to happen globally? Is that why we're seeing that citizenship is now becoming nebulous, where things can be bought and sold? I can buy my citizenship, and then I can just have it stripped away from me. So is that an element that we could see happening here at the end of time? Well, look at this headline from Rebel News. This was from January 17, 2024. It says, "WEF globalists encourage mass relocation of millions of refugees displaced by climate change." So instead of it just being a taxation, are people and huge refugee movements happening all over the world as a way to get people where they want them to be, to line up for this new resource-based economy that has nothing to do with nations and borders and boundaries and national identity as we understand it today? Because all of that has to go away, because that's all part of the old world order. They want a new world order. So are we seeing this happen in our world today? Let's read here. It says in Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 to 18, it says, "And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled that which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken of by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not." Let's look at the conditions that are happening in the Middle East. This, of course, has everything to do with Christ's first coming as a child. But are we seeing a representation of this globally here in our world as we're about to see the second coming of Jesus? Look at how many children have died in Gaza. It's insane. I think that they've gotten their eyes and their teeth. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I think this is way past that now. It has been declared an open genocide, what's happening in Gaza. And who are they targeting? Civilians, children, and women. So are we seeing a again, another repeat of this in our day, something inconceivable that you would just go wiping out children. Well, it happened. It happened historically. It happened at the time of Moses, and it happened at the time of Christ. So are we seeing repeats of this in our day and age? Perhaps so. Perhaps so. But of course, this is all part of the plan. Another facet to this Agenda 21 Global Sustainable Development Goals and relocation of human societies is to create wildland areas and corridors for wildlife so that apparently they can allow the planet to heal itself from all of this overpopulation and human interaction. And so, what do they want to do? They want to create the Wildlands Project. Okay, it says simulated reserve and corridor system to protect biodiversity. This is a real plan. It was from 2004. This is an EPI report. This is an actual thing. This is the direction that they want to go, and we'll see if this lines up also with the 10 regions of the world. Let's see here. So when you're looking at this map of the United States, what do you see? You see all this red, and it looks like spaghetti all over the place, right? Well, what does this red mean? These are core reserves and corridors, little to no human use. You will not be able to live or have any habitation in any of the red areas. And if you look at where these red areas are, let's look at Arizona for a second. This is Phoenix. This is the Phoenix area. Who's going to live there? Nobody. Nobody's going to live there. Then you see these bright yellow spots. It says these are highly regulated use. How much of this is yellow? So you're still not going to be able to go here without permission. You can't just go where you want to go. So how are they going to be able to set up these zones if everybody's living there? They're going to have to be relocated. Have to be relocated. It says here, this is this orange color here is this right here, the border that separates, let's call what it might be, the North American Economic Union from the Central and South American Economic Union. This would be what that border wall is all about. It's more than just refugees and keeping people out of the country. This is actually dividing the economic union. How about normal use? So where are the people going to be? They're going to be in these little splotches that you see here. And where is the highest concentration of the population? It's right here in the Midwest. Well, where is the least amount of people in this country? The Midwest. So what are they doing? They've tried to make all these western states right here that have a Pacific coastline are almost impossible to live in. Try opening a business in California. Not an easy thing to do. Not an easy place to live. Very expensive. There's little pockets here of where people might be allowed to live. But for the majority, we see those green areas right here, and of course we see them here. But they want to get people away from the coast, and they want to centralize you more into the Midwest. And we see these pink parts here. These are for Indian reservations. So those that may think the Indian reservations would be untouched, yeah, right. Look at that. Sometimes the sun don't shine, the grass ain't green, and the wind don't blow, right? That's what that means. And look at these military reservations. So the military installations are somewhat intact. For the most part, they're just going to have a couple little crisscrosses where they can't go through. But you have to have these military installations. You have to have this one in Nevada. Any guess where that might be? How about this one in New Mexico? Any guess what that might be? Or how about this one in Arizona? This is the Barry Goldwater Missile Range. It's very interesting. So let's keep looking. If we look at California and Nevada, this is about what it would look like. You would only have these small little areas here where you would actually be able to live, and you wouldn't be able to travel because you can't go into these yellow areas, and you most certainly can't go into these red areas. You can go in the yellow areas with permission, but you can't just live there. So this is the rewilding of the United States. Look at Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. Look at this is the metropolitan area of Phoenix and all the suburbs. Look at that. Where are you going to live? You can't live there. They're going to relocate you. And so if you want to see these maps in greater detail, you can go here to the Friends of Clear Creek Management Area. So let's keep moving on. So what does all this lead to? What is this Club of Rome all about? What did it lead to? Well, the Club of Rome is what inspired the meeting in Rio in 1992. Right? So this is the Summit Earth Agenda, Agenda 21. And of course, now we have Agenda 2030, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. So you have all these wonderful goals. No poverty. Well, sure, if you reduce the population, everybody will have something, right? But what if you're one of the ones that has to be reduced? Zero hunger, good health. Look at all these. These sound like wonderful things. But is it possible to bring it about in our current world system? Who knows? But this is the direction that they're going. What about climate action plans? So climate action plans is also something that is an offspring of the Agenda 21 and the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. And the climate action plans go all the way down to the local level. Every state has a climate action plan. Every major city has a climate action plan. And so here's one example of that. This is from the Arizona Technology Council, and they have an article here. It says, what you need to know about the Phoenix Climate Action Plan. So what that is it's telling you what the biggest concerns are for that area in terms of climate change, and how they're going to organize a response against those climate activities. Okay? So when you're reading it, it sounds like, oh, well, this is how they're going to protect us from who knows what's about to happen. But really what this is about is how they're going to use the climate to control the mass of people and how they're going to manipulate us. Okay? That's in my opinion, of course. But when we see it aligned with how the Bible frames things, it sure does seem like it's in harmony. The cosmology of the world, circa 1976. Again, we talked about that those reports from the Club of Rome are literally just stating the brainchild of this think tank to divide the world into 10 regions. There's this really interesting clip from this movie called Network, and this movie is from 1976. And this man is going to explain what the world consists of. Okay, this is 1976. So let's watch this clip.
Valhalla, Mr. Beale. Please sit down. You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, Rins, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused.
What do you think? Does that sound about right? In 1976, this little gem in this movie, what are they telling us? Is this the goal? It sure does seem like it. It sure does seem like it. The world is a business. And it's just waiting to be divided into the 10 economic unions that are going to be based on resources. And you and I will be considered a threat to those resources. And we will have to be able to validate our existence on this planet. Otherwise, there is no point to us being here. That's how you control the population. Is that the direction that we're going? Possibly. I want to read to you this quote. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain and then sell it at greatly increased prices. This means starvation to the poorer classes and will result in a civil war. This was written in 1899. The Civil War in America ended in 1865. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered. Everyone who shall be found written in the book of life. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Is that why we have these people so convinced that this is the only way to save the planet? Because they don't have the spiritual eyesight of the righteous, of the wise? Are we seeing a construct where there's so much turmoil and chaos that it's necessary to bring about a new order out of that chaos? Maybe so. Maybe so. Is that where we're at? It says This means that starvation to the poorer classes will result in a civil war. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. It says here, and at that time shall the people be it shall be delivered, everyone that is found written in the book. So at the same time that there is this huge, massive global unrest, that signals also that people, when it's talking about the people shall be saved or delivered, that means that the second coming of Christ is right around the corner. Is this happening? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. We've had riots before. We've had all kinds of things before in this planet. But are we seeing a global unrest that is not just fixated on what's happening in Europe, but is now expanded out to every corner of the globe, so that every populated island, every populated continent is now going to be affected by what is happening on this planet? No more sense of isolation? That's something that this world has never seen, and that would be a time of trouble such has never been seen on this world since there was a nation. What about this here? This is a quote about conflicts between trade confederacies and labor unions. Let's look at this. It says, the work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future. What's the work of the people of God? So those who are faithful to their Bibles, who are paying attention to the events that's happening, what should they be doing? They should be getting prepared. Does that mean just sit and watch it happen? No. It means get prepared. You need to be in a place where you can have your own provisions, where you're not so dependent on these government and businesses in order to get your food and your supplies. We need to be in a place where we can be more self-sufficient. It says here, we need to prepare for the events of the future, which will soon come upon them with blinding force. COVID-19, you went to bed March 10th free, you woke up March 11th in chains. That's how fast these things move. Oh, it's just a couple weeks to, flatten the curve. Right. In the world, gigantic monopolies will be formed. Men will bind themselves together in unions, maybe think tanks, that will wrap them in the folds of the enemy. A few men will combine to grasp all the means to be obtained in certain lines of business. We talked about this in the first one. Trade unions will be formed, and those who refuse to join these unions will be marked men. If you don't join their society, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be excluded from participating in the new economic system. So what would happen? You wouldn't have the right mark to buy or sell? Maybe so. Let's look at this. This is from a book by Darrell West, Billionaires' Reflections on the Upper Crust. It says U.S. Billionaire Political Power Index. And these are the people who are the movers and shakers in the U.S. And so who are these people? Let's take a look. Here you have the Koch brothers. You have Michael Bloomberg. You have Tom Steyer, Sheldon Adelson. You have Rupert Murdoch, Joe Ricketts, Bob Mercer, Paul Singer. And who's this? Oh, Peter Thiel. That's right. We talked about Palantir. This is the brainchild of Peter Thiel, or he's at least the figurehead for Palantir. Palantir may actually be a government program that is now public. Now we have George Soros. Skipping over, we have Bill and Melinda Gates. We have Zuckerberg, we have Warren Buffett, we have Bezos, we have Donald Trump. Oh, that's right. He is a power broker billionaire, isn't he? And of course, we have Alice Walton from the Walmart fame. So are these people the power brokers? Are these people looking out for the interests of themselves or for the rest of us? It would appear as though they're trying to do everything to bring about a new world order. And that new world order excludes the majority of the people on this planet. There's too many of us, according to the Club of Rome. So what's the solution to all these things that are breaking loose on the planet? We need to get away. We need to get away. We need to be living in places where we can be more self-sufficient. It says, again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. How are you going to participate in these economic unions if you don't go along with what they say? Remember with those the feet of iron and clay? The clay doesn't want to go along. The clay is a representation of those people that are going to be delivered from this, because Michael, or Jesus, is about to stand up and come to rescue his people. And if he doesn't come, there won't be anybody left. Because the biggest part of this system is that they want order out of chaos, but Satan's really only interested in the chaos. The order that he's going to bring about is after he's eliminated most people. That's his goal. Is God going to let that play out the way he wants it to? We'll have to wait and see, because there's going to be many, many changes going on in this planet. And if we don't have the help and the security of being able to rely on the Holy Spirit and Jesus and the angels, we're literally just doomed. So we'll see how God works, because there is going to be a latter rain, the pouring out of the Holy Spirit in large measure upon his people, such as never been seen, which is going to have to counteract, of course, a time of trouble such as the world has never seen. Very interesting parallels. It says here, we should now begin to heed the instruction given us over and over again. Get out of the cities into rural districts where the homes are not crowded closely together and where you can be free from the interference of enemies. That sounds pretty insightful for someone who may have been able to see what this world was going to look like at the end of time. Very interesting. Let's continue. Country living a blessing to many of those living in the cities who have not a spot of green grass to set their feet upon, who year after year have looked out upon filthy courts and narrow alleys, brick walls and pavements, and skies clouded with dust and smoke. If these could be taken to some farming district, surrounded with the green fields, the woods and the hills and brooks, the clear skies and the fresh pure air of the country, it would seem almost like heaven. Isn't that what so many people say? My cathedral is nature. Why? Because it is God's second book to man. We have the book of nature and we have the book of the Bible. And the book of nature declares the handiwork of God. And when we get the opportunity to go out in nature, don't you feel refreshed? Well, what if you had the opportunity to live there and not have to deal with all of this stuff that's going on in the cities? Think about it. Pray about it. Pack a bag, pack a box, put it in your living room and pray. Say, Lord, look, I'm putting my foot in the water. I want to get out of the city. Help me. Help me, Lord. I'm serious. And see if he doesn't open a way for you to get out. This is his will. It says, with a piece of land and a comfortable home, fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and queens. And look at this gentleman here. He's got his own water tanks. He's got his solar panels. He doesn't have to worry about too much. Look at his garden growing there. That is self-sufficient living. So what does Jesus say? In Luke 21, verses 20 through 22, it says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. It is now time to get out of the cities. We see the Sunday law is most certainly in the pipeline. We see that the Christian nationalism is making a complete push into pop culture in this world, or in this country, and we're beginning to see a shift in the way of thinking. It's militarized Christianity. That's what it is. So actually it's a form of fascism, just wrapped, of course, in the garb of Christianity, with the trappings of Christianity, so that they can exercise full and total control. So what is the answer? Isaiah 26:20-21. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. This going into your chambers and shutting that door about you, this is the country living. This is getting away from the city where all of these distractions and temptations and destruction is going to take place. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. We're still barely at the foothills of turmoil. So this is the time to get out while you still can. Don't wait for things to get so bad that there's no way out. Make those changes today. In chapter 52 of Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 464 and 465, it says, "The church, the light of the world. The time is not far distant when, like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation, the United States, in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities, preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains." We are at this time in history. We are seeing the rapid decline of the major cities. We're seeing the social unrest. We're seeing the social engineering and the rise of this Christian nationalist nation. It's happening before our eyes. And as we're seeing this happen, this is the warning to us to get out of the cities and to begin to live in a way that allows us to have some sustainability, that we're not dependent on these governmental systems or the merchants of the earth. We are there, folks. We're there. There's no more time to lose. We need to be on our knees asking God to give us that preparation that is necessary for us to be able to leave the cities and go into the country. It's also a change of mindset. Don't think that you can just leave the city into the country and not take the city with you. We need to start leaving these things behind. Not to just go and reestablish the same sinful civilization out in the country. This is a time for us to put those things away and to cut off the avenues of temptation and to begin to ask, Lord, what is it that you would have me to do? This is that era. We have reached this point. Just because they haven't announced the Sunday law doesn't mean that it isn't in the workings. And as we see the Roman armies surrounding us, which is these Christian nationalists gaining power, gaining prominence, make use of your means today before it's valueless in the new economic system, before they finally tear away the old economic order to reestablish the new one. Because in order to participate with the new one, you're going to need what? The mark of the beast. So if you're waiting for that time to make a transition, you're waiting for the wrong time. It's now. We just read over and over and over again that the Lord has been warning us to get out of the cities. Are we going to listen? Because the time is going to come where that probation is going to close. And you've either listened or you've not. So part of being a Christian is to do what Jesus says. If you love me, keep my commandments. He was the one who warned about the siege around Jerusalem, to give warning to those who would listen to leave. And the ones that listened and left were called Christians because they obeyed the words of Christ. We need to, in our day, be obeying the words of Christ so that we can have the title of Christian. Stay away from the cities, friends. We've reached a new era in time, and we are just about to see a time of trouble such as this world has never seen. Again, we're laying the foundation. We're showing the bits and the pieces. We're going to continue to talk about these things. We do have another message getting ready to be prepared for next week, and we're going to go into a bit more detail about the relocation and the design of what they're trying to do to herd people into the mass camps that they want them to be in, also known as smart cities or whatever it is that you want to call it. Those are all there for the purpose of relocating masses of people. So we've talked about these 10 kings and having one mind, that they would give their power over to the beast for 1 hour. This couldn't have happened in Europe because the beast was in power there for 1,260 years. 1 hour translates to only something like a couple weeks in terms of prophetic time. So that's not back then. This is something that's coming in the future. 10 kings who have not received a kingdom as yet. So friends, let's pay attention to these signs. Let's pay attention to what's happening here. If you would like a copy of this message in PDF form, you can email me at brian@triedstoneministries.org, and I would happily send you a copy. And you can, of course, go to our website, triedstoneministries.org, and you can see a listing of our other videos there as well. But again, this is the second installment of the Triedstone Ministries Present Truth podcast. We're going to continue to pull back the veil as much as we can to alert the world about what is happening. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer as we close. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you have given us such tremendous insight that we can look at the things in this world and begin to decipher what is happening. You have given us the allegories in the Bible with which we can look and see what compares with those allegories in the times that we're living in and the prophecies that are being fulfilled. We can see that it is happening rapidly all around us, Lord, and that time is short. Lord, I pray that this message would find its way to the people that need to hear it, that you would open their hearts and minds to be able to receive, and that they would in earnest seek for your guidance as to how to live in a sustainable way and to get away from the cities, O Lord. Please help us to be able to listen to your warning and to obey. We thank you for all that you have done for us and blessing us. Please forgive us of our sins. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Brothers and sisters, again, I thank you for participating, for listening all the way to the end. Stay tuned because we have another part coming up of Triedstone Ministries Present Truth podcast. Thank you.